Hey there. How is everybody today? Another Wednesday. I hope you're having a great week so far. I am in my office space today because I'm getting ready to do a live webinar right after I do this live with you guys. So, changing things up a little bit today. All right, so what are we talking about today? This is episode number 33 of the Transforming Anxiety podcast. Here comes Poppy. Can't see her. My dog's right here. Yeah, there she goes. So this is episode number 33 of the Transforming Anxiety podcast. And today we're talking about being certain in the uncertainty. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about uncertainty and what that looks like and what that feels like. So let's talk first about external uncertainty. There's a lot that goes on in the world. There's a lot that goes on out there. Things like what other people are doing or saying, how they're behaving, including the kids, right? That's something outside of you that you can't control. It can be a little bit of an uncertain X factor, right, in your life. Things like weather, the politics, what's going to happen at work. There's all sorts of things like that that are kind of out there that feel uncertain because we have little to no control over them, right? That's one kind of uncertainty. Another kind of uncertainty, and this is what I talk with my clients a lot about, is an internal sense of uncertainty. And when they're experiencing the feeling of uncertainty, it's sometimes around the anticipation of when am I going to feel anxious again? When am I going to have another panic attack? When am I going to be uncomfortable and create anxiety again? When's that going to happen? So there's an internal sense of uncertainty because it's like, when is this thing just going to happen to me? Right? And people have a sense of uncertainty around anxiety, around the feeling of anxiety and the sensations of anxiety. So there's the external uncertainty, things we can't control out in the world. There's the internal uncertainty and senses of, when is this emotion going to happen to me? When is this experience going to happen to me again? Whether it's anxiety, whether it's anger, whether it's grief, right? Any of frustration, any of those so-called negative emotions that we like to brand as not good, that we shouldn't be feeling them. So there's two different kinds of uncertainty. And what I have found in talking with my clients is that most of the time, the internal sense of uncertainty, when am I going to feel anxious again? When am I going to have another panic attack, is almost a bigger concern for them than the external uncertainty that they face with the people in their life or with work or with our culture and our society. They're almost more worried about that internal sense of uncertainty, the fear of feeling anxious, the fear of feeling a panic attack, right? So I think, first of all, it's interesting to distinguish between external uncertainty and internal uncertainty. And here's what I want to offer you. Uncertainty, just like certainty, is an emotion. And where do all of our emotions come from? They always come from our thinking. So if we're creating a feeling of uncertainty, it's not because we can't control somebody out in the world. It's not because we don't know when we're going to feel anxious again. We don't know what next, tomorrow or the next hour or the next week is going to hold. It's not that. It's because we're thinking thoughts that create a sense of uncertainty for ourselves, right? So we can create uncertainty by thinking uncertain thoughts. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what she's going to say. I don't know when I'm going to feel anxious again. Those kinds of thoughts create a feeling of uncertainty. So I was talking with a client about this a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, so what if we just thought differently about these situations? She was talking about work, and she was talking about things that were going on with her husband that she was feeling a lot of uncertainty about. And I said, so what if we just thought differently and created a feeling of certainty for yourself? And, we started talking through some possibilities around work that it's like, okay, instead of running all the like, what if this happens? This is the worst case scenario for this event, and how is this going to go wrong? Instead of doing all that, we were saying, like, what if this all goes right? What is the best case scenario, right? How could this really offer and support and benefit and help the client and help the people who are coming and be great for the company? We could ask ourselves those questions too. And she paused and she said, isn't it kind of delusional to not look at the what ifs and to just focus on the positive, right? And what could go right? And I said, isn't it kind of delusional to just kind of look at the negative and what could go wrong in all of the worst case scenarios, right? Aren't we being delusional either way? Truly, right? Because all of this is happening in our minds. By definition, it's somewhat delusional, right? Does that make sense? None of it's a reality. Anytime we're running worst case what if scenarios in our head, anytime we're catastrophizing, all of it's happening in our mind. None of it's happening out there. We're not in the future, we're in the present moment. And from this present moment, we're going to the future and we're telling ourselves scary stories about it, right? That's delusional. So instead, if you're going to go to the future and tell yourself stories, what if you went to the future and told yourself a story that felt great, right? It's not that we don't want to plan for things that could go wrong, of course. It's not that we'd want to be a total Pollyanna about stuff and be like, this is going to be amazing. This isn't really about that. It's about really understanding that if you're feeling stuck in a loop of uncertainty because you keep going to the future, and whether this is something outside of you or whether it's something inside of you, if you keep going to the future and telling yourself a scary story about what the future is going to be like, then you're hosed, right? If instead you were to go to the future and tell yourself a story that feels better, who could you be in this moment as you start living into your future? That would be a totally different thing, right? So, this episode of the podcast is all about creating certainty where you've been creating uncertainty. Uncertainty is just a feeling, that's just an emotional vibration that's moving through your body. All of our feelings are created by our thoughts. So if you're creating a sense of uncertainty about work or about a relationship or about your future or about how you're going to feel, check in with that and see what thoughts you're thinking that are creating the feeling of uncertainty. From there, I would look at those thoughts very closely, challenge those, question those. This isn't about just skipping over this and, being a Pollyanna and thinking amazing thoughts and feeling happy all of the time. We need to feel the feelings that are coming up for us. However, if you're finding yourself stuck in this loop of uncertainty and you want to give yourself a break and maybe offer yourself some certainty, there are thoughts that you can think that would create a feeling of certainty instead of all the uncertainty that you've been practicing. So, just a few thoughts that come to mind. I made a guide for you that goes along with this episode, and you can download that guide at kellyhanlonmccormick.com/podcast/33. You can download your free guide. These are thoughts to think on purpose that could lead you towards certainty. Take these and make them your own, right? Change them up, add to the list, make these apply to the circumstances and the triggers and the thoughts that you've been having that have been creating the uncertainty. But here are just a few examples of some thoughts that I have practiced that create a sense of certainty for me. All right. So one thought is, I can do hard things, right? To me, there's such a sense of certainty that comes when I look at a thought like that. I say, I can do hard things. Whatever's coming my way, I can do it, right? That creates a sense of certainty for me. Another good one is I can breathe, I can pause, I can give myself perspective and act from there. That was kind of a long thought. But the idea is I can get to a point of perspective where I can feel and act and create the results in my life that I really want. Right? I can breathe, I can pause, I can give myself some space and some perspective. Right? Another one is I can handle what's coming my way. Like one of the things that makes me a little anxious, right? One of my triggers that is very easy for me to think anxiety producing thoughts about is when my kids are sick and I feel completely helpless to help them. You don't ever really know exactly what's going on unless it's something like strep throat or something that's pretty obvious that you can test for. And so there's just this big like, is this going to get worse? Is it going to get better? How long are we out for? Is it contagious? Do I need to quarantine? All of this stuff, right? And I get very, I don't know, it's very easy for me if my brain is left to its own devices to go a little wild, right? So something that I really focus and practice intentionally, especially as we're heading into cold and flu season, and they're both in elementary school still, so we are germ magnets, of course, is that I have the tools I need to take care of my family, right? Between rest, between copious amounts of water, between my essential oils and tea and doctors. I have all the tools that I need in order to take care of my family. That is a thought that gives me a lot of certainty, even as we head into the uncertain season of cold and flu season, right? Where I can't control what's going to happen, what germs, who's going to get sick, right? So those are just a few examples. And like I said in the guide, there's many, many more. And you can download a copy of that, kellyhanlonmccormick.com/podcast/33. Grab that guide and make these your own. Create thoughts and be intentional about thinking and practicing thoughts that create the feeling of certainty for you. Check in with your thoughts and see what you've been thinking that has been creating uncertainty, right? And remind yourself anytime that you that you do what my client did and have that pause and you're like, wait a second, am I being delusional and silly here? Remind yourself that we're being just as delusional. We're being just as silly, right? When we're thinking negative thoughts, when we're thinking painful thoughts, when we're creating suffering for ourselves. Anytime we go to the future and tell ourselves a scary story, we're being delusional. Okay? So you might as well, if you're going to go to the future, tell yourself at least a neutral story, right? And challenge your mind, challenge yourself to come up with a better feeling story. If there's something for you, like for me, you know, the trigger of my kids getting sick, if there's something that you can find there, really look at that, challenge that thought and see, where have I been creating uncertainty for myself and how am I going to go to work to start creating certainty for myself? Sound good? All right, so grab your guide that will give you some thoughts to think on purpose, to practice thinking on purpose, that will create and generate the feeling of certainty for you. If you would like some help with this, if you want some one-on-one, time to work on this, schedule a consult call with me. Let's talk about it. We'll take 15 or 20 minutes and we can talk through a situation or circumstance in your life and just see where you've been creating uncertainty and how we could start to reframe and how we could start to shift and how we could start challenging those thoughts to see what you could create instead. I would love to chat with you. I'd love to meet up with you personally. So you can find that kellyhanlonmccormick.com/coaching. You can find the link to schedule a consult call with me. That would be awesome. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing my Freedom from Anxiety webinar here in just a few minutes. If you missed it and you're not on the list to attend live here with us or to get the replay, don't worry, we'll do it again. I'm going to do it again in October, and then I'm going to be doing some new webinars this fall. So we're going to be doing some new fun classes and more education. I'm going to be taking even more Q&A and more interactive stuff. So that's going to be coming this fall. So don't worry, you haven't missed out. stay tuned. Make sure you're on the email list. Make sure you're checking in on the website, and I will be posting all of the details for future webinars and events. Okay, that's it. Next week on the podcast, we're going to talk about right and wrong. That's another really good one for us anxious folks. So I will see you at the same time, same place for that. And until then, folks, take care.